Everyone, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. So I'd like to describe the purpose of our day. First of all, we wanted to kick off a celebration for the 250 years of our country. And also at this time, we are going to unveil officially our new display that the Sons of the American Revolution helped us sponsor. So our museum is dedicated to telling our veteran and home front stories in times of conflict and teaching our nation's history. At this official dedication, this will be something new that will have something from the Revolutionary Wartime, and we really appreciate them helping us with that exhibit. I'd like to call forward Bob Cleveland, who is president of the Sons of the American Revolution.
She said, my name is Bob Cleveland. I'm the current president of the Ohio Valley chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution, otherwise known as SAR. Just to give you a little bit of background, the Sons of the American Revolution started in 1889. It was a bunch of individuals who realized that they shared a history in that each of them had a relative that was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. They decided at that time that it would be good to come up with an organization that would help preserve that history, to honor the veterans, the veteran ancestors and whatnot, and to make sure that they pass the knowledge and the patriot spirit along to their future generations and whatnot. Today, the organization is made up of the same people. We're all descendants of Revolutionary War veterans. There are now thousands of us, I think well over 30,000 worldwide. And we espouse to do the same things that they did then. We promote patriotism as much as we possibly can. We honor our ancestors to the greatest degree possible. We do things like gravesite markings and whatnot, and honor those veterans. At the same time, we try to support the community. We support outreach programs like homeless veterans and that sort of thing. And the biggest thing in my mind that we do is we try to pay it forward and have programs to teach our children and future generations how this country was established, where the priorities and the values are and that sort of thing. And hopefully that will help make, first of all, more secure than it's been for a while. But hopefully it will help make more educated students and young people growing up carry on the traditions that have made this country as great as it is. With that, I would like to turn it over to Cliff, and he's going to come up here and he's going to explain some of the demonstrations or some of the displays that you'll see in the case over there and what they all mean. Cliff?
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Back in 1776, these famous lines were in the future, some in the far future. None of our founding fathers knew the specifics of what our nation would become. I've been asked to explain the contents of a new display at this museum, and I think the best description could come down to a single word, and that's potential. Potential. Potential that we become citizens and not subjects. Potential that all humans are equal and not beholden to a caste system of noble birth. Potential that the core democratic values that we all hold would become, well, commonplace. Potential that the average person would have the power to vote. Potential, that's what's in that display case over there. But now, let's discuss a few of the more tangible items in the display case and what the public will see when they visit. I did not grow up in Evansville, and being an outsider, some of the things that impressed me the most was the number of Revolutionary War veterans that lived and are buried here. I was of the mindset that the Revolution was just something out on the East Coast. Then, one Memorial Day, I visited the Spirit of Vincennes Rendezvous and clearly saw that Indiana was in the middle of the struggle for independence. There were also many soldiers that were not paid in gold, but they were paid in land that happened to be on the frontier of the Ohio River Valley. When I joined the Sons of the American Revolution, I gained a new appreciation for the number of veterans buried here in the tri-state area, and I got that through attending grave rededications. How do we put that on display? How do we properly educate the public about dispersed graves and showcase a battle that happened in another city? We decided there would be 2 layers or goals in mind with the display. First, there would be something for museum patrons and school groups to see when they were on a field trip. And you will see a mannequin dressed in a frontier woodsman attire with a hunting rifle that was originally intended for harvesting deer and then later became a weapon of war. You'll see the tools that he uses to maintain that weapon. You'll see a summary of the Battle of Fort Saxville. Now, I'm not going to repeat all the signs that are on there. I do encourage you to read them. I hope you do. But in a few minutes, we'll even hear a presentation about the battle flag of Vincennes. Our second goal in creating that display case is to have a database or maybe a landing platform with links to other databases. And this is for someone who's a bit more serious, who wants to do genealogy and is a historical researcher. They will find out more about our local veterans. And I'm going to hit upon that potential again. So the display has a lot of potential beyond what's behind the glass. In 1776, there was potential for a new nation, and today there is potential for local history to come alive. Soon there will be a QR code where you can scan that and get right to that database. You will be able to see biographies of the local veterans. And it is hoped that one day there will be an interactive map where you can mouse over the pens and see on this map where there are the local graves are located in the Vanderbilt County area. And perhaps, potentially, a person will string together a handful of those graves and make a little local road trip out of it. Perhaps a person will lay a grave on a tombstone during Christmas time. Perhaps a student will discover that a Revolutionary War veteran is in bicycling distance of their house. Go there, take a picture, and then show it to their teacher. This is the 250th birthday of our nation, and I'm glad that local history will be a part of it on display. Thank you.
So at this time, we're going to have a ribbon cutting. And so I would like to call forward Bob Cleveland, Cliff Holmes, McKay Miles, Mike Lynn, and Isaac Tereth. I don't know. I always mess up your last name. Isaac. He really worked hard on putting this display together, so we wanted Isaac to be a part of it. Okay. Continuing our program, we're going to have speaker Bob Hall, and he's going to tell you about the Battle of Blue Lick.
Thank you. Well, let's go back to the 1700s. How many Revolutionary War battles can you name? I'll give you a short list that I put together. How about Lexington, Concord, Trenton, Princeton, Saratoga, Camden, Charleston, Guilford Courthouse, Kings Mountain, Yorktown. What was the final battle of the Revolutionary War? Well, a lot of people think of Yorktown as the final battle. It was quite decisive. But a year after Yorktown, battles were raging in the West. Yes, we are in the Old West right here. The Battle of Blue Licks occurred northeast of Lexington, Kentucky. The year 1782, and we start to understand what was going on by looking at February of that same year, February 1782. The Indians began an offensive against the settlers in Kentucky. In the next month, Captain David Williamson and the Pennsylvania militia raided the Indians, and they ended up executing 9 fairly peaceful Delaware Indian prisoners. This action enraged the Indians. In July of that year, British captains Alexander McKee and William Caldwell assembled a force of 1,100 Indians with 300 more warriors only a day away. Caldwell was in command, and those Indians invaded Kentucky. On August 15th of that year, the Indians laid siege at Bryan's Station in Kentucky. That was about 5 miles north of Lexington, Kentucky. Then pioneer reinforcements arrived, and after the reinforcements arrived, the Indians left. Next, the colonial militia met to decide what their next step would be. The options were to stay put and wait for more reinforcements, or to pursue the Indians. The men were quite undecided on what to do. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Boone and Major Hugh McGarry, that is the same Hugh McGarry that you're familiar with, the founder of Evansville. Boone and McGarry were experienced Indian fighters, and Boone and McGarry said that the group should wait for even more reinforcements. The officers of the group were Colonel Stephen Trigg and Colonel John Todd. Those two men did not have fighting experience, but they overruled Boone and McGarry, and they wanted to pursue the Indians. So the colonials took off in pursuit of those Indians. That was a force of 182 men in the colonials, among the colonials, and they would be pursuing a force of Indians and Canadian Butler Rangers. And they had thought that the enemy actually numbered about 500 warriors. That was not correct. Instead, they had about 200 warriors. The colonials, in pursuit of the Indians and the Butler Rangers, rode all night. That was a distance of 37 miles that they had covered. Then they rode 2 or 3 more miles. Along the way, Daniel Boone warned them that it looked as if the Indians had left a trail that was just suspiciously too easy to follow. Nevertheless, on the men went. The men and the horses, after all that travel, were exhausted when they reached Blue Licks on the morning of Monday, August 19th, 1782. The men stood on the shore of the Licking River, preparing to cross that river. They were kind of making their own plans, but suddenly Major Hugh McGarry, who was second in command, not in control, he charged into the river and yelled, "All who are not damned cowards, follow me!" And then the men began crossing the Licking River in single file so that they could reach a bare area on the other side of the river, and they could look up a steep hill with a 6-degree slope. The Indian force was waiting just on the other side of that hill crest. The colonials attacked the Indians and the Canadian Butler Rangers. This was a disaster for the colonials. The colonials retreated with a few Indians in pursuit. The Indians returned to the battlefield and they scalped and mutilated the bodies of the colonial dead. The result of this disastrous battle, about 10 of the Indians were killed, but about 77 of the colonials were killed, including 14 officers, and 11 colonials were taken prisoner. Among the dead who were victims at the Battle of Blue Licks were Trigg, Todd, and Daniel Boone's son, Israel. The day after the battle, the colonials returned to the battlefield, and they found the bodies of the dead had been cut up and mutilated. The battlefield did not contain any dead Indians. So the Battle of Blue Licks, what a disaster for the colonials. Thank you.
Okay, next, Jules Momini will talk about George Arthur Clarke's battle flag and incense.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I have 3 basic things. I'm not reading a script here, so bear with me. But there are the colonial militia I'm going to talk about, in particular the ones here in the Northwest Territory. The capture of Fort Sackville. But before I start that, does everybody know that this weekend is its own special memorial? 251 years ago tomorrow was the firing of shots at Lexington and Concord. So we have a very special anniversary this weekend. That's when we started the Revolutionary War. It was a year later, 250, that we had our Declaration of Independence, but it actually started this weekend, 251 years ago. Now I have something I read, it's called the Concord Hymn, and it was a famous poem of the early 1800s. And then some comments that were sent to me about that, and I'd like to make a revised kind of a summary of those. 251 years ago this weekend, a shot heard round the world at Lexington and Concord was not the colonial army, like the uniforms these gentlemen are wearing. It was rather the working men of that community. They were the blacksmiths, the farmers, the merchants, what we came to call the Minutemen. They came to that field in Lexington and Concord knowing that not everyone was going to go home. Think about that for a second. They came because and knew that not everybody was going to go home. They were vastly outnumbered. They came because they knew one fundamental thing, that 3 men who refused to be disarmed cannot be conquered. That is our tribute. That is what all these soldiers that are current and our past and all our veterans know. They may not all come home, but we can prevail. So again, I want to repeat that. The free men who refused to be disarmed, i.e. the British coming to take their weapons, cannot be conquered. That is probably the most important thing I've read about this week, 251 years ago. Now, what were the militia? Changing the subject here a little bit. There were roughly, according to Hillsdale College and some lectures that I've listened to, 1,200 battles, including the one you just heard about, during the 8 years that we were in the Revolutionary War. You know how many the colonial army, which was a very important part of our defense in the lack, but they only fought in about 120 of them. The rest of those battles were fought by militia. Militia came because there was no army, there was no police. They came there because that was in defense of the values of their families. So you have to think about that. They were not paid. They had to bring everything they wanted to defend themselves and come on amendments and others. So the militia fought way more battles, and they were in most of the larger battles too, like Yorktown. There were militia there. Bunker Hill were most of the militia. So the militia, which is how I am outdated, and I am honored to say that my patriot in the Sons of the American Revolution fought in the battle at Evansville. And that is why I am dressed like a militiaman. And my wife who's over there is dressed like a citizen of Vincent at the time. So that is the militia's role in our revolution. The people who volunteered, they weren't paid, they came here because they knew that free men who are not disarmed cannot be conquered. So the last thing I want to say is, if you want to see what a militiaman would have had to bring, I'm not wearing any of my battle rattle, as my son calls it. It's laying over there on the table for the SAR, and they'll be happy to talk to you about if you're interested in the Sons of the American Revolution. But if you just want a slight entertainment while you're standing there waiting to talk to somebody like Dr. Brown, that all that stuff laying on that table is what I would have had to bring of my own, at my own expense, to fight. And I'll be happy to talk about the different accoutrements that I have over there. The last thing I want to say is, okay, George Rogers came with his militia and the militia of the local area, which were called the Free French Militia because they weren't French anymore, they weren't British, and took over both Cahokia and Vincent. And if you look at our nice presentation over there, you'll see the route and their battles. But when they came, they took over the fort. Okay, they thought, who is this? How are we going to know what this is? Well, it's not part of France and British took it from France. It's not part of Britain because we just took it from Britain. So who is it going to be? And they said, well, we are in the Northwest Territory. And for those who remember the grade school geography, that became the 5 states here in the Northwest, what was then the Northwest Territory. So George Rogers Clark commissioned a flag, a battle flag, to be made and flown over Fort Sackville. If you're looking for our SAR booth, it's right over there, and that green and red striped flag is the flag that George Rogers Clark commissioned to be flown, and that is the first flag for this part of the country, not Indiana, so forth. It was that flag. So when you're thinking about your heritage, that is the first flag that flew over what's now the state of Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio. That was, and I am proud to say that my patriot's wife was a seamstress who made that. So thank you, ladies. So not only did I have a patriot who fought with George Rogers Clark, but his wife, and there's a receipt from George Rogers Clark that he paid her to make that flag. So that would also entitle the women because they were doing things in support of the revolution, becomes the daughter of the American Revolution. So, that is what I wanted to say. Please come by. I'll be happy to talk about the accoutrements. The gentleman behind the table would be happy to talk to you about the SAR. The women to their left would be happy to talk about the DAR. And all the things that you see in our booth back there, basically I have laying on this table. They are not originals. Most of the ones in our booth, unfortunately, are not either. But be happy to talk about any of that. You can actually put your hands on. Those are things that either I have made or bought to honor my patriotism. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you over there.
Okay, I did want to tell you about everything so you don't miss anything. So starting here is the Sons of the American Revolution table. Next to them is the Daughters of the American Revolution table. Yeah, wave, ladies. Next to them is Altrusa. They are handing out books to children because they work on literacy in our city. Next to that, can you wave? Okay, you can learn all about the history of space from Amanda Scurry. And next to her is Kira Long, and she represents Browning genealogy. So if you are interested in genealogy and want to know how to get started, go talk to Kira. And then as you go around, you will see a bunch of gentlemen in different period outfits. You see Isaac, these are all military outfits, and they have brought a lot of their wares, and they are members of the Awkward Squad. And that's Isaac Kabortz, if I say it correctly. Okay, and then as you continue, I want you to visit a woman who has all of the sewing and historical costumes. Her name is Kate Lemons. Can you wave, Kate? And then here we have a photo op that we encourage you to use some of our, just like when you go to a wedding, put on some patriotic things and take your photo. And if you're savvy, there's directions on how you can post it. Tell them you were at the museum today. Continuing on, you will see our Rosie. I don't know where she's at, Nancy. She has quite the display. Rosie, where are you? Nancy. There she is. Okay, she has quite the display that she can educate you about Rosie the Riveter and the Roosevelts, all kinds of good information. And then as you're going this way, you'll see Brian Perry, and he has brought members with him to the Stamp Club of Evansville, and this is the history of the post office through stamps. So if you've never seen that, take a moment over there. And then also, Brian has put together a display honoring Ernie Kyle, a war correspondent, okay? And he thought that that would be very fitting because of the day it is. And then also with him is Guy Sides. He's waving at you. And then as you come forward, one of our wonderful volunteers, he is painting for you. This is Kent Epler. You will see a lot of his paintings. He's painting right now. We are so fortunate to have him, and he is a veteran, and he talks to our kids groups, and he's just so willing to give his time to us. Thank you, Kent. And then, of course, you know our little damn band. Then in the middle, we want to make sure you see our education group is manning a children's kids area that they can make crafts, that they can show their things in front of the photo op. We have a display of Molly, American Girl, that they can play with. There are puzzles. There's all kinds of things to keep your little ones. I also want to note that we do have drinks and we have snacks. And today they have put out a whole table of books that were donated to the museum, but they're duplicates of what is in our library. So if you're interested in seeing these historical books, there's a whole display. And then don't forget our gift shop. We have put out some things just like our 250 shirts and anything else that might make you celebrate this year. So make sure you also, you're welcome to go throughout the whole museum, and we will have docents roaming around if you have any questions. So we just really want you to take this opportunity to visit everyone who's come out today and also enjoy our museum. So thank you for coming. Okay. I've been told there's one more thing they're going to do, is they're going to teach us how to fold the flag. Is that what it is? Close. Okay. Didn't know about this one.
Right, so audience, let me give you some little instructions on this. Basically, you can stay seated, you can keep your hats on. We're not going to put our hands over our heart. So a little bit at ease for the audience. And what we're going to be doing is folding the flag. There's a neat ceremony with the 13 folds matching the Fold 1. The 13 stripes represent the original 13 states: Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island. Fold 2. The 50 stars represent our 50 United States of America. Fold 3. Patrick Henry said, "I know not what course others may take, but for me, give me liberty or give me death." Fold 4. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country, but he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Thomas Paine. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Fold 15. Fold 5. That all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. From the Declaration of Independence. Fold 6. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty upon ourselves and upon our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. Fold 7. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances, the First Amendment. Fold 8. The basis of our political system is the right of people to make and alter their constitutions of government. George Washington said that. Fold 9. Thomas Jefferson says, "My God, how little my countrymen know what precious blessings they are in possession of, and which no other people on earth enjoy." Fold 10. fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Abraham Lincoln. Fold 11. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Emma Lazarus inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. Fold 12. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. John F. Kennedy. Fold 13. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Martin Luther King Jr. Color guard, thank you, and dismissed. Audience, thank you.
Once again, thank you, and go ahead and enjoy our many displays.